A college student dozed off in class and was unexpectedly caught by a nightmare demon. Startled, Chris ran away and quickly entered another classroom, only to find the nightmare demon appearing again. Upon seeing this, Chris's legs turned to jelly as the demon approached with its claws raised. At the critical moment, Chris woke up with a scream, startling the whole class. Trying to calm down, she noticed a strand of hair on her book that had just been cut, making her wonder if it had all really happened. This reminded her of a strange incident from 2 days ago. Her friend Dean had invited her to meet at a restaurant, claiming he hadn't slept for 3 days and nights. He explained that every time he fell asleep, someone came to kill him. Seeing Dean looking exhausted, Chris urged him not to think too much. Chris stepped away to use the restroom. Dean, unable to hold on any longer, was taken over by the nightmare demon and controlled to pick up a fruit knife. When Chris returned, she thought Dean was about to commit suicide and urged him to put down the knife, but in the next moment, Dean slashed his throat. The following day, Dean's funeral was held. A strange little girl appeared with 4 scratches on her body, but no one else seemed to notice her. Out of nowhere, a ghostly hand reached up from the grave, causing Chris to wake up in fright. As she left, she noticed a photo of Dean, realizing they seemed to have known each other since childhood, even though she only remembered meeting him in high school. Recalling the past night, she suspected Dean had been forced to commit suicide. However, her boyfriend Jesse dismissed it as a result of Dean's poor mental state and reassured her not to overthink it. Just then, Nancy walked by, insisting everything was real because she had seen it too. Jesse refused to discuss it further and pulled Chris away. That night, while Nancy was listening to music, the water in her cup began to flow backward, and strange changes appeared on the wall. She woke up in fear but was relieved to find it was just a nightmare. Meanwhile, Chris was awakened by strange noises. She went to the small attic in her house, filled with old items, and a particular box caught her attention. While rummaging through it, she discovered a torn-up child's school uniform. Suddenly, the attic lights went out and the terrifying nightmare demon reappeared. "Remember me?" Chris woke up abruptly again, realizing it was just another dream. The next day in class, exhausted from sleepless nights, she tried to stay awake but noticed something odd while flipping through a book. The steel claws from her dreams appeared in the pages. At that moment, everything around her turned to ash, and the nightmare demon stood at the podium. In a moment of crisis, Chris screamed and jolted awake. Looking at her classmates' surprised faces, she thought it was just another nightmare. But then she noticed strands of hair on her book that had been cut in her dream. Everything felt too real to be a coincidence. That night, Jessie, worried about Chris, came over to comfort her. At midnight, she was awakened by her dog barking. Not wanting to disturb her sleeping boyfriend, she quietly stepped outside to check. Calling for her dog, she received no response, raising her alarm. As she stepped out of the yard, she saw her dog lying in a pool of blood. "I was just patting him," the nightmare demon said. Terrified, Chris ran back home. As she opened the door, her house transformed into a kindergarten. A little girl grabbed her hand, pulling her into a room. Just around the corner, the nightmare demon appeared again. "Ready or not, here I come." Chris jolted awake once more, drenched in sweat. Looking at Jessie beside her, she went to the bathroom to wash her face. Just as she started feeling relieved. "Found you." Chris struggled desperately, causing Jessie to wake up from her screams. I tried to wake her, but the next moment Chris was suddenly left to the next the "Wake up! Oh my God, Albedo was slashed open, ladong ta hafi." Jessie was spread with blood. Flung and hara hatrugara de sakuda alam mukangath like it was a modak. Afaboon cut hafan nancy and explana everything. Ada siebing how to fund. What a siep das net more duman and one had enough slop. Tokunda prison, Jesse fought extremal nevas, fung ho which deba on his drums. Manuel Nancy color Quentin and told him about crosses to They agreed to meet at the library. Quentin, arriving first, noticed a little girl staring at him. Curious, he approached her, but suddenly, the nightmare demon appeared. Fortunately, Nancy arrived just in time to wake him up. Realizing they might be next, they had to find out the reason behind these nightmares. Meanwhile, in prison, the guards informed Jesse that his parents had bailed him out. Walking outside in a daze, he soon sensed something was off. Nung around fund this curata had tunud on its wall and this let's one ut. On an instant, fund himself on a factory womany children wam prosened. This nut more dumb and upod sung with that shop clause. Jesse ran in for but Rushed thus, under this curata was so this butters of cress and done. Turafung scrum ukud behind him. One hatunud, saklas pusad, thrusbud aludanteas trijuk dothans prosan. And she hard and slupful to does, jeek or both to sother hup muppans, as sonashilla buns, turafung stokla reach it up from what foots not la, knockin' that stuff from hamathamata vanish. Rothanung to haram, shu up in its daughter fund a snong outset. The lung bewildered shu stupid fukid ainly to fund herself in front of an oven done kandagatin. Buffa shuk sturpake this dummin upod bunt ha. This dummin rosad ha with its stalklas just then quantun kalo wakung ha from's nutma. Kung rakuds Nancy and Quantun deep scufkad the had none each other kundagadan but had none momo of off. Nancy's mother was foosed to revel this truth. He's a good num Freddy creature untutanas children, but was actually a monarch. The children shoot scuzz and muntfunad, mysterious rumts, truth was expussed, Freddy deceipered without a truss, as Nuxda Dionia swamon competition quantun was pslidan kuda. Resurfacing, he found himself in an abandoned factory, witnessing Freddy being burned alive by furious parents. Awakening from his vision, Quentin explained to Nancy what had happened. They speculated that the children had lied, leading to Freddy becoming the nightmare demon. However, uncovering more evidence, they realized Freddy was truly guilty, killing them to revive painful memories. To defeat Freddy, Nancy planned to bring him into reality. Entering the dream, she faced Freddy while Quentin stood by to wake her. However, exhaustion caused Quentin to fall asleep. Attacked by Freddy, he was left lying on the ground. The scene shifted again, with Freddy tormenting Nancy. She ran, but the ground changed beneath her. Falling from the ceiling onto a bed, she found herself wearing a dress Freddy favored. In despair, she screamed, waking Quentin. Nancy grabbed a knife, slashing Freddy's arm, then striking his neck. Defeated, Freddy was finally eradicated. To ensure the nightmare was over, Nancy set the entire house on fire. Thinking it was over, she returned home, only for Freddy to emerge from the mirror. The terrifying nightmare continued.